Hi! In today's video, we'll be talking about loops in Python. We'll be covering while-else loop, for loops, nested for loops, break statement and continue statement. So, let's go! Let's start with while loops. While loops are used to execute a block of code only when the condition inside it is true. Let's take an example. Over here, this is the syntax of while. It checks that, okay, if some condition is true, then do something, otherwise do something else. Let's take a variable called count and let it take the value as 1. Now, let's write our while loop. Let me write as while my condition is suppose count is less than equal to 5. Then I'll write a colon. A colon indicate the while loop is starting. Now over here, see, as soon as I pressed enter, an automatic space has been created. This is called indentation. Now this helps in the better readability of the code as well as execution. Suppose if I write as while count is less than equal to 5, print count, and then increase the value of count is equals to count plus 1. So what would happen? Let's see what has happened. It has printed the value of count from 1 to 5. It has checked, that is when count is equals to 1, then it printed the value of count over here, and then it did 1 plus 1 and then updated the value of count. Thus the value of count became 2. So after 1, then it's checked, since 2 is less than equal to 5, it printed the value of 2 here, and then it incremented the value as 2 plus 1. So thus 3 was the updated value of count. And similarly it ran the loop, that is 3 less than equal to 5, print the value 3, and then the value is updated as 3 plus 1. Now when the value was 5, so 5 was equal to 5, so this while condition was true, and then it printed the value of 5 and it did 5 plus 1, which is 6. As soon as this condition became false, it came out of the loop. After our loop has exited the while block, we can also write an else block which executes something else. Let's write again count is equals to 1. Because of this while chunk, our count is now taking the value 6. That's why again I'm writing count equal to 1. Let me paste this while block, and now I'm writing else. Note over here, the else block is different from while. That's why we have to remove this indentation, and I'll write else colon print loop got exited at now it will print everything. That is, when it got the value 6, so when count was 5 plus 1, then it checked that okay, 6 is less than equal to 5. When this condition became false, then it came to this else chunk and then printed the statement, that is loop got exited at 6. Let's move to for loops. A for loop in Python is used to iterate over a sequence, and based on that iterator variable, it executes a chunk of code. Let's write it as, suppose if I want to take the values from 0 to 5 and if I want to print the value. So I'll write the for loop as for I in range 5 and then colon. So over here range 5 means accounting from 0 to 4. And 5 is excluded over here. So I'll write for loop I in range 5, and if I write print I, then see it is printing, firstly it starts with 0 and then it automatically increments the value as plus 1, which is 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Similarly, I can also write for loop 0, 5, then here we are being specific what is our starting point. That's the same result as above. What if I don't want my for loop to start from 0? Suppose if I want to start from 5 and end till 10. I will copy the same chunk over here, that is for loop I in range 0, 5, but let me make the edit. If I want to start it from 5 and if I want to end it at 10, because the last thing is excluded, so I'll write it as 11. So it will take the counting from 5 and it will increment it only till 10, that is 11 will be excluded over here, and it has now printed the values. It's not necessary that a for loop will always be incremented by 1. It can be incremented by any number. Let's take an example. Suppose if I want to start my loop with 0, so let me write 0, and then if I wanted the values till 10, so I'll write here 11, and suppose I want the values to be incremented by 2, then the third element I'll write it as 2. So let's see the output. Here it started the loop from 0, and instead of 0 plus 1 it did 0 plus 2, because here we have specified that we want to increment the loop by 2, not 1. Then after reaching 10 it has stopped. You know, for loops can also be applied with lists and not necessarily ranges. Let's take an example. Suppose I have a list over here, and if I want to iterate over each and every single element of this list, I will write it as for loop, let's say I in my underscore list, and then if I print I, it would sequentially go to every single element and then print it. We will now head over to another topic, which is nested for loop. That is, we can write a for loop inside a for loop. Let's take again our example, for loop I in range 5. So it will take the counting from 0 to 5. A nested for loop would have something like for loop j. Now over here, see, my iterator variable is I, but for my second for loop I am using the iterator variable as j. So let's write for j in, let's say we will use over here my underscore list. And then if I'm printing, notice the indentation level has again changed over here. It has added another space because it now indicates whatever is happening in this block, it is an impact of both the for loops. So be careful, that is, you don't remove this indentation or add further spaces to it. Let's now write print I, j. Let's see the output. See what it has done. It firstly goes to the first for loop, and then here it takes the value of I as 0. Now keeping I as 0 fixed, it will go to the second for loop and iterate over it. That is, it will then print one by one all these 4 elements along with the 0th value for I. Next, what happens? Then it increments the value of I by plus 1, and then over here it moves to second for loop, which is this one. That is 1 Washington DC, then 1 London, 1 Tokyo, and then 1 Moscow. Similarly, it's done for 2, 3 and 4. Now we'll be talking about break statement. Note, break statement can be used with both the loops, which is while loop as well as for loops. How break statement works is, that is, whenever our Python code encounters a break statement, then it will exit from all of the loops. Suppose over here I am having my iterator as my num, and it's taking a counting from 0 till 50. It checks that if my num is more than 5, then break it. Otherwise, if it is not breaking it, it would print the current number. Let's run this chunk. See, when the number was less than equal to 5, that is when this if condition was false, this print statement was getting executed and it was printing the results. But then after it, when the value of my num became 6, this thing got checked and this thing became true and it encountered a break statement. It did not do any further evaluations in the for loop. It did not go to 6, 7, 8, 9 and did not print any of it, because break means come out and exit from all of the loops. Now let's move to another similar concept to break statement, which is continue. However, in this example, we will try to understand how continue statement works differently from break. A point to be noted, just like break, continue can also be used with for and while loops. In break statement, we noticed that if something is true and a break statement is encountered, then it will come out of all of the loops and it will not even print anything, and it will not even execute or update the values of the iterator. However, the subtle difference in continue statement is, let's take this example. Over here, I have taken my iterator as my num. It takes the value from 0 to 9 and it prints the current number irrespective of anything else. So it will firstly print 0. And then whenever it goes to a continue statement does not exit the loop. It only stops the next execution of the statements, but it does not stop iterating the variables. Let's run this code to understand better. What it has done, firstly it goes to my num and it takes the value 0 and it prints the current number, which is 0. And then it checks, is my_num more than 5? The answer is no, because the value currently is 0. Thus it prints if the next value would be my_num plus 1, that is the next number would be 1. And now it updates the value to 1. It prints the value as current number is 1. It checks if this condition is true or not. Since it's not true, it will then again print the next statement. It will continue till the value is 5 or 6. Let's see, when the value of my_num is 5, it prints the current number and then it checks this condition. This is false. That's why it prints that my next number would be 5 plus 1, which would be 6. Over here it has worked here. Now it says current number is 6. As soon as it checks 6 is more than 5, it becomes true and then it goes to continue. What continue does, that it will not allow this statement to be printed. That's why after 6, nothing like my next number would be XYZ is printed. But it does not even exit the loop. It goes over here to the beginning and then it increments the loop. That is, it increments the number to 7, then 8 and 9. Because continue will not allow the next chunk after it to get executed. Let's run this thing with the break statement over here. So we will see, instead of continue, if we write break statement, see, as soon as it received the value as 6, it just broke the loop and it did not run any of these statements. That's what is the subtle difference between continue and break. So that was all about loops in Python. Do let us know in the comment below how did you find this, and subscribe for upcoming content. Until then, see you soon.